He leaned on my doorframe, smiling like he already knew how this would go, and said, "Then prove it." That was the moment everything changed, not when my car got hit the first time, not even the third time, but right there, with that little half smirk like I was the idiot for even knocking. I remember standing there holding the repair estimates in my hand, feeling this mix of anger and disbelief building in my chest, because part of me still thought this was going to be a normal neighbor conversation, you know, the kind where someone says, "Hey man, my bad," and you both move on. But it wasn't that kind of neighborhood anymore, not since Ryan moved in next door. I'd been living in that house for almost 8 years, quiet cul-de-sac, nothing fancy, but clean, predictable, the kind of place where people wave when they drive by, where you recognize the sound of your neighbor's garage door without even thinking about it. I work from home, so I notice things, patterns, routines, the small stuff most people miss. And when Ryan Carter showed up with that 18-foot fishing boat on a trailer, I noticed immediately, mostly because there was no place for it on his property. At first, I didn't think much of it. People move in, they're figuring things out. Maybe he just needed a couple days. But then a couple days turned into a week, and a week turned into this routine where every single morning, right around 6:45, I'd hear the low rumble of his truck, and then that metallic clank of the trailer hitch as he backed the boat straight into my driveway like it belonged there. Not halfway, not like he was borrowing space temporarily. No, he'd roll the whole thing in, line it up clean, like he'd been parking there his whole life. The first time I walked over and said something, I kept it light. I remember even smiling, trying to keep it neighborly. "Hey, man, I don't know if you realized, but that's actually my driveway." And he just laughed, not apologetic, not embarrassed, just this casual, dismissive laugh. "Yeah, I figured you wouldn't mind. I'm just using it for a bit." Like he'd already decided for both of us. I let it go that day. Probably shouldn't have, but I did. You tell yourself it's temporary, you don't want to start tension over something small. But then it kept happening. Every morning. Same time, same sound, same boat creeping into my space like it had more right to be there than I did. The second time I brought it up, I wasn't smiling anymore. I walked over while he was unhooking the trailer and said, "Hey, I need you to stop parking this here. It's not okay." And again, that same laugh. He didn't even look at me at first, just kept adjusting the hitch, then finally glanced up and said, "Relax, man. It's just a driveway. You've got plenty of space." And there it was, that tone. The kind that makes you realize you're not dealing with someone who's going to meet you halfway. Still, I didn't escalate. I wish I could say I had some master plan from the beginning, but I didn't. I just went back inside, told myself I'd deal with it if it got worse. It got worse. The first time his trailer clipped my car, I didn't even see it happen. I came out later that morning and noticed the edge of my driver's side door had this fresh dent, paint scraped clean like someone had taken a blade to it. My stomach dropped immediately because I already knew. I didn't need a witness, didn't need a confession. There was only one thing moving around my driveway every morning. I knocked on his door that afternoon, pointed it out, kept my voice calm, probably calmer than it should have been. "Hey, your trailer hit my car this morning. There's damage." He stepped outside, looked at it for maybe 2 seconds, shrugged, and said, "Could have been anything." That was it. No denial with emotion, no concern, just indifference. Like my car was already someone else's problem. 3 weeks later, it happened again. This time I heard it. That dull, hollow thud, the kind of sound that makes your whole body tense before your brain even catches up. I rushed to the window and saw him mid-maneuver, backing the boat in too tight, the trailer just kissing the side of my car like it didn't matter. I went outside immediately, adrenaline already kicking in. "Ryan, you just hit my car?" Again. And he didn't even stop what he was doing. "You're overreacting," he said, like I was the inconvenience. By the third time, it wasn't a dent anymore. His hull cover dragged the entire length of my driver's side panel, leaving this long, ugly scar from front to back. I stood there staring at it, running my fingers over the scratches, feeling this shift inside me, like something finally snapped into place. Because it wasn't an accident anymore. It was a pattern. And worse than that, it was intentional indifference. I started documenting everything after that. Photos, timestamps, angles, close-ups, every mark, every scrape. The total came out to about $2,300 in damage, give or take. Not catastrophic, but not small either. not something you just shrug off because your neighbor doesn't feel like taking responsibility. A couple days later, I printed out the estimates, organized them neatly, and walked back over to his house. I remember standing there for a second before knocking, just thinking, give him one more chance. Maybe he'll surprise you. Maybe he'll finally act like a decent human being. He didn't. He opened the door halfway, leaned against the frame like we were in some kind of standoff, and I laid it all out for him. 3 incidents. All documented. This is the total cost. I need you to take care of it. I even handed him the papers, like there was still a version of this where things ended normally. He glanced at the top sheet, didn't even bother flipping through the rest, and then looked up at me with that same smile I'd started to recognize, the one that said he thought this was a game. That's a nice story, he said, but you're going to have to prove it was me. He paused just long enough to let it land, then added, good luck with that, neighbor. And then he smiled. Not nervous, not defensive, just entertained. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, feeling the weight of what he'd just said, and then I nodded, slow, almost like I agreed with him. Okay, I said quietly. I will. And the truth is, in that moment, he thought he'd already won. He had no idea what had been recording him every single morning for the past 14 months. I didn't say anything else after that, just turned around, walked back across the lawn, and closed my front door a little more carefully than usual, like if I moved too fast I might let the anger spill out in a way I couldn't take back. And for a few seconds, I just stood there in the quiet of my living room, staring at nothing, replaying that smile in my head, the way he said, prove it, like it was impossible, like I was already outmatched. Then I looked over at my phone sitting on the kitchen counter, and that's when it hit me. See, about a year earlier, I'd installed a Ring camera system, nothing fancy, just a couple of cameras covering the front yard and driveway. At the time, it was more about package theft, you know, the usual suburban stuff, porch pirates, random late-night motion alerts, things like that. I hadn't really thought about it beyond that. It just ran in the background of my life, quietly recording, quietly storing everything to the cloud. 14 months of footage. I picked up my phone, opened the app, and scrolled back, and there it was. Clip after clip, neatly time-stamped, each one triggered by motion. And once I started looking, I couldn't stop. Every single morning, right around the same time, there was Ryan's truck pulling into frame, the trailer following behind it, rolling into my driveway like clockwork. It was almost surreal watching it from that perspective, like seeing a pattern you'd lived through, but now laid out in cold, objective detail. I tapped into one of the earlier clips, and there it was, the first incident. You could see the trailer swing just a little too wide, that slight misjudgment, and then, contact. Subtle, but unmistakable. The exact moment his trailer edge clipped my car door. I replayed it 3 times, not because I needed to confirm it, but because I wanted to feel that certainty sink in. Then I checked the second one, same thing. Different day, different angle, but the same carelessness, or maybe at that point, it wasn't carelessness anymore. By the time I got to the third incident, the one where the hull cover scraped down the entire side of my car, I actually leaned back in my chair and just let out this quiet breath, almost like relief. Because there it was, undeniable. You could see the fabric dragging along the paint, slow, deliberate, the kind of contact you can't miss unless you're choosing not to. And the craziest part? His trailer number was clearly visible in almost every single clip. That's when it shifted from frustration to strategy. I spent the rest of that evening going through everything. Not just the 3 incidents, but all of it. Every morning he'd used my driveway. Every time he crossed that line like it didn't exist. By the time I was done, I had 23 separate clips saved, each one labeled with the date, the exact time, and a short description of what happened. It wasn't just evidence anymore, it was a timeline. And I'll be honest, there was a moment, sitting there in the glow of my laptop, where I could have just sent him one clip. Just one. Enough to prove the point. Enough to shut down that smug little prove-it challenge. But something in me said no, because this wasn't just about being right anymore. It was about being thorough. The next morning, I called the non-emergency police line. I kept it simple, factual. Property damage, repeated incidents, video evidence available. Within an hour, an officer showed up at my door. Nice guy, calm, professional, the kind of presence that immediately makes things feel more real. I invited him in, handed him a USB drive with the footage I'd compiled, but before he even plugged it in, I pulled up 3 of the clips directly on my TV. Just watch these, I said. He stood there, arms crossed, watching in silence as the first clip played, then the second, then the third. I didn't say a word while they ran. I didn't need to. The footage did all the talking. When it ended, he nodded slowly, like he'd already made up his mind. Yeah, that's pretty clear, he said. We can file a report for property damage. And just like that, something that had felt like a personal conflict suddenly became official. He took down all the details, copied the footage, and before he left, he said something that stuck with me. You did the right thing documenting everything. Most people don't. That same afternoon, I contacted my insurance company. Now, I wasn't expecting miracles here. I just wanted to get the process started, see what my options were. But once I told them I had video evidence, detailed logs, and a police report already filed, the tone of the conversation changed immediately. They walked me through opening a claim, then something called subrogation. Basically, they go after his insurance to recover the cost. I uploaded the footage, the photos, the estimates, everything I had. It felt almost strange how smoothly it all went, like the system was designed for exactly this kind of situation. But I wasn't done, because there was another piece to this, something I'd almost overlooked at first. See, a few nights earlier, while I was lying in bed replaying everything in my head, I started wondering, is he even allowed to store that boat there? So I looked it up. Turns out, in our city, there's a zoning ordinance, Section 14B. And buried in that language was a clause about storing trailered watercraft on residential property. Specifically, it had to be registered to that address. His wasn't. Not even close. And the penalty? $175 per day, per occurrence. I remember sitting there at my desk, reading that line twice, just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding it. Because if I wasn't, then this wasn't just about my car anymore. This was leverage. So I filed a complaint with the city's code enforcement division. Again, I kept it clean, factual dates, times, supporting evidence. I even included still frames from the footage showing the boat in my driveway, timestamps visible. And then, I waited. Those 10 days felt longer than they should have. Not because I doubted what I'd done, but because there's always that part of you that wonders how far something like this is going to go. This wasn't just a neighbor disagreement anymore. This was paperwork, fines, insurance claims, real consequences. During that time, Ryan kept going like nothing had changed. Same routine, same confidence, backing that boat into my driveway every morning like the world still worked the way he thought it did. And I'll admit, there was something almost surreal about watching it happen, knowing what was already in motion behind the scenes. Then the citations showed up. I didn't see the mail get delivered, but I did see him open the first envelope. I happened to be in my front room when he stepped outside, flipping through the pages, his posture shifting just slightly. Not panic, not yet, but confusion. Then came the second envelope, then the third. By the end of that week, there were 23 citations issued retroactively, each one tied to a documented instance. Total fines, just over $4,000. And for the first time since he moved in, I didn't hear that trailer in my driveway the next morning. The first morning without that sound. I noticed it immediately. No engine rumble at 6:45, no metallic clank, no slow roll of tires crossing into my space like it had every right to be there. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels earned. I stood there by the window with my coffee, almost expecting to see him pull in anyway, like habit alone might carry him through it. But he didn't. For the first time in months, my driveway was just mine again. And it should have felt like a win right there. In a lot of ways, it did. But the truth is, that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. A couple days later, I got the call from my insurance company. They'd reviewed everything, the footage, the police report, the estimates. The adjuster didn't waste time. We're moving forward with your claim, she said, matter of fact. And we'll be pursuing recovery from the other party's homeowner's policy. There was a brief pause, then she added, almost casually, given the documentation, this should be straightforward. Straightforward. That word stuck with me, because nothing about the last few months had felt simple. But hearing it framed that way, it was like everything I'd done, every clip I'd saved, every note I'd labeled, had turned something messy into something clean and undeniable. Within a week, the repair was approved. $2,300. Covered. And then, the second wave hit. I didn't hear it from Ryan directly. I heard it from his side, his insurance. Apparently, when a claim like that goes through, it doesn't just disappear into paperwork. It leaves a mark. His annual premium jumped about $1,800. Not catastrophic, but enough to sting. Enough to remind you, every single year, that something went wrong, and it was your fault. That's when things shifted. Because up until that point, Ryan had been operating from this place of total confidence. Like the system wouldn't touch him, like I didn't have anything real. But now the system had touched him. And suddenly, he needed to talk. I got the call on a Thursday afternoon. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Hi, is this Daniel?" the voice asked. Calm, professional. "Yes, speaking. This is Mark Ellison. I'm representing Ryan Carter." There was a brief silence after that. Not awkward, just measured. Like both of us knew exactly why we were on that call. "I wanted to reach out," he continued, "and see if there's any possibility of resolving this situation, particularly regarding the zoning complaints." Particularly. That word did a lot of work in that sentence. Because that's what this had become, really. Not just about my car, but about those citations. 23 of them. For $1,000 sitting on his doorstep, and probably more if things kept going. I walked over to the window while he was talking, looking out at the empty stretch of driveway, and for a second I just let myself think, not react, not rush, just think. "Depends," I said finally. "What kind of resolution are we talking about?" "Well," he said, choosing his words carefully, "my client is willing to come to an agreement that would be mutually beneficial. In exchange for withdrawing the complaints, we can discuss." I actually smiled a little at that point, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. This was the part where everything gets softened, where accountability gets negotiated down into something more comfortable. I let him finish. Then I said, "I'll consider it." And I meant that for about 4 seconds. Because here's the thing. This wasn't just about damage anymore. It wasn't even about money. It was about the way he handled it from the start. The laughs, the dismissal, the prove it, like I was beneath the conversation. That stuff doesn't just disappear because the numbers start adding up. So when I spoke again, I was very clear. "If your client wants this to go away," I said, "then here's what I need. First, a formal written apology. Not a text, not a handshake. Something real." I paused just long enough to let that land. "Second, a signed agreement that he will not use or enter my driveway for the next 3 years. Not once." Another pause. "And third, full reimbursement of the $2,300 in damages." There was silence on the other end for a second, the kind where you can almost hear someone recalculating. "Before we discuss anything else," I added, because that part mattered. I wasn't negotiating down. I was setting the baseline. Mark cleared his throat slightly. "I'll relay that to my client." "Please do," I said, "and let me know." We hung up, and I remember just standing there for a moment, phone still in my hand, feeling this strange mix of calm and finality. Like whatever happened next, I was okay with it. It took less than a week. That's all it took. I came home one afternoon and found an envelope taped to my front door. No knock, no conversation, just left there. Inside was everything. A typed, signed apology, not overly emotional, but direct. An agreement outlining the driveway restriction, clear terms, signatures at the bottom, and a check, full amount. Just like that. I sat down at my kitchen table and read through it slowly, not because I needed to verify it, but because I wanted to feel it. The shift, the resolution, the quiet end to something that had started so small and spiraled into something much bigger. And here's the part one didn't expect. I didn't feel victorious. Not in the way people imagine. There was no big moment of celebration, no sense of "I won." It was quieter than that. More like balance had been restored. Like something that had been off for a long time had finally settled back into place. A few days later, I saw Ryan outside for the first time since all of it. No boat, no trailer, just him, taking out the trash. We made eye contact for a brief second. He didn't smile this time. Didn't laugh. He just gave a small nod, the kind that says more than words ever could. And I nodded back. Not forgiveness. Not friendship. Just acknowledgement. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't really about him. It was about boundaries. About what you allow, what you document, what you're willing to stand up for when someone assumes you won't. And honestly, about a camera I almost forgot I had. So now I'm curious. What would your camera have caught if you actually went back and looked? Because I can tell you this, sometimes the difference between being dismissed and being taken seriously is just one piece of evidence you didn't realize you already had. Let me know what you think. Was it fair, or did I take it too far?